I like Westerns because the good ones are real. You feel real when you're making them, and, well, you don't feel actory.
Gary Cooper was Hollywood's golden boy, effortless, charming, and untouchable. But there were many whispers behind that easygoing smile and the quiet and presence that made him a legend. The kind that never quite faded, no matter how many years passed. And for the longest time, he never addressed them. Until the end. With the cameras long gone and nothing left to protect, he finally said it. Just a few words, but enough to change everything. Enough to make you wonder, was it guilt, relief, or just a man tired of keeping a secret we all saw coming? Join us as we unravel Gary Cooper's final revelation and the truth that lingered just beneath the surface of his legacy. Gary Cooper's mental and nervous breakdown. Gary Cooper's career was full of success, but behind his public image, he faced personal struggles that often overshadowed his achievements. While he was admired for his roles on screen, his life off-camera was not as glamorous. The more famous he became, the harder it was to deal with the pressure. His growing fame only added stress, both mentally and physically. While his fans saw him as a strong, silent hero, he was fighting a battle within himself that no one knew about. You won't believe how bad it was. The stress in Cooper's life was made worse by the tension between his protective mother and his romantic partners. His mother had a large influence on his decisions and disapproved of his relationships. She didn't like Lupe Velez or Patricia Neal, two women Cooper was involved with. This caused a lot of emotional strain, as Cooper was caught between his love for these women and the need to please his mother. The jealousy and disagreements between his mother and lovers created stress that affected his ability to focus on his career and personal happiness. As Cooper's fame increased, the pressure on him grew heavier. Hollywood expected him to always look perfect and perform well in his films. This constant pressure began to take a toll on his mental and physical health. He was always in the public eye, and the stress of keeping up with expectations pushed him to the limit. His fame was supposed to bring rewards, but instead, it added more weight to his shoulders. The pressure became so great that it eventually led to a breakdown. Between 1930 and 1931, Gary Cooper reached his breaking point. The exhaustion from his personal life and career led him to suffer a nervous breakdown. He was physically drained, and mentally, he couldn't handle the constant strain anymore. The breakdown was a wake-up call for Cooper, showing him that he couldn't continue living under this kind of pressure. He realized that despite his outward success, he was struggling deeply inside. Cooper admitted that he often felt lost and as if he were being controlled by others. He felt like his career, relationships, and public image were pulling him in all directions, leaving him with no space to be himself. This feeling of being trapped made it even harder for him to handle the pressures of Hollywood. He was no longer the confident, independent person he once was. Instead, he was overwhelmed by the expectations placed on him. His sensitivity made him more vulnerable to manipulation. Cooper cared deeply about what others thought of him, and this emotional sensitivity made it easy for people to take advantage of him. He struggled to assert himself, and often let others make decisions for him, whether it was his mother or his lovers. This emotional vulnerability only added to his stress and made it harder for him to find peace. Despite all these personal struggles, Cooper continued to maintain his image as a Hollywood hero. He knew the importance of how the public saw him, so he worked hard to keep up the strong, silent persona. Even as he battled inner demons, he didn't want the world to see his weaknesses. His public image remained important to him, and he did everything he could to protect it, even if it meant hiding his true feelings. Gary Cooper's attempts to balance his work and personal life often failed. He tried to manage both, but the pressures from both sides were too much. The stress from his career and relationships was overwhelming, and it became impossible for him to find harmony between the two. His professional life, while successful, only added to his struggles. In the end, Gary Cooper's breakdown revealed the hidden struggles behind his image. His career and fame had masked the emotional toll he was facing. Behind the strong, silent image was a man dealing with the pressure of living up to others' expectations. His breakdown made the world realize that even the most famous stars have their battles. Stay tuned to find out more about this story. Gary Cooper's womanizing lifestyle and infidelity. Gary Cooper's charm made him incredibly attractive to women, both on and off the screen. With his good looks and confidence, he became a heartthrob in Hollywood. Women were drawn to him, not just because of his acting, but because of his effortless charisma. He had a natural ability to make people fall for him, and this extended beyond his film roles. His relationships with women became as famous as his movies, and his love life was often in the spotlight. Throughout his career, Cooper became known for having romantic relationships with many of his female co-stars.
It's your world. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Well, then don't you talk that way to me again, Alvin. Don't you ever.
This wasn't unusual in Hollywood, where it was common for stars to fall for each other during filming. Cooper, however, seemed to take it to another level, engaging in several passionate affairs with actresses he worked with. These relationships were often intense, filled with drama and emotion. Yet, like many of Hollywood's stars, these affairs didn't last long and were frequently surrounded by rumors and gossip. One of his first well-known relationships was with actress Clara Bow, who was famous for her free-spirited personality. Their romance was filled with excitement and passion, but it also came with complications. Bow, often called the it girl of Hollywood, was just as unpredictable as Cooper, making their relationship both thrilling and difficult. This affair set the stage for the many relationships that would follow throughout Cooper's career. Later, Cooper became involved with actress Lupe Velez, whose fiery temper made their relationship one of the most intense. Velez was known for being hot-headed, and their romance was often filled with jealousy and emotional outbursts. On one occasion, Velez became so jealous that she stabbed Cooper with a knife. Despite this, they continued their relationship, though it was clear that the passion was often mixed with anger and drama. Their connection was a roller coaster of emotions, and it seemed like the more intense the love, the more intense the fights. Along with Velez, Cooper was also romantically linked to other famous women, including Marlene Dietrich and Caroline Lombard. His affair with Dietrich was passionate but short-lived, just like his fling with Lombard. These relationships added to his reputation as a womanizer, and Cooper's love life became a topic of discussion in Hollywood circles. He was often seen with different women, and it was clear that his romantic interests were never fixed on just one person for long. Rumors also suggested that Cooper may have had a relationship with actor Anderson Lawler, though this was never confirmed. Regardless, it added to the gossip surrounding his personal life. The rumors only fueled the public's fascination with Cooper, and he couldn't escape the constant speculation about his relationships. Despite his numerous affairs, Cooper's infidelity didn't stop even after he married Veronica Balfe. He continued to pursue other women, including actress Ingrid Bergman. Their affair was passionate, but like many of his relationships, it ended suddenly. His inability to remain faithful caused tension in his marriage and added to the personal struggles he faced throughout his life. Cooper's womanizing lifestyle brought him constant drama and personal conflict. His inability to commit to one woman led to many broken relationships. Even though he had fame and success, his personal life was often chaotic, filled with emotional ups and downs. His actions left a trail of hurt feelings and heartbreak, proving that despite his charm, Cooper's love life was far from perfect. But that wasn't all. What happened next will leave you speechless. The impact of his affairs on his marriage. Gary Cooper married Veronica Balfe in 1933, believing she was different from the other women he had known. He saw in her something special, and he hoped their marriage would bring him peace and stability, far from the spotlight of Hollywood. Their connection was strong as they shared many interests, such as a love for outdoor activities and quiet moments away from the public eye. In those early years, their marriage seemed perfect, with the couple enjoying a comfortable life together. Their bond grew even stronger when they had their daughter, Maria, in 1937. The birth of their child brought them closer, and it seemed to solidify their relationship. Cooper was thrilled to become a father, and he often expressed how much he loved his daughter. At that time, it seemed like they were a happy family with a bright future ahead. However, as time went on, the stability of their marriage began to fade, and problems started to arise. In 1942, Cooper's affair with Ingrid Bergman began to change everything. The affair, which started as a passionate romance, quickly became public knowledge. The press caught wind of the relationship, and soon the whole world knew about it. The affair placed a huge strain on Cooper's marriage to Veronica. She felt deeply humiliated and hurt by the public scandal, and the couple's once peaceful life was turned upside down. Veronica struggled to come to terms with her husband's betrayal, and the damage done to their relationship could not easily be undone. Things only got worse when Cooper admitted to having another affair, this time with Patricia Neal. Instead of ending it, Cooper continued seeing Neal, which caused more tension in his marriage. Veronica was devastated by his admission, as she could not understand why her husband would continue a relationship with another woman while they were still married. His actions caused her pain and anger, and their relationship became increasingly difficult. Veronica made it clear that she could no longer tolerate the affair, but Cooper didn't seem ready to let go of his other relationships. The strain on their marriage grew stronger, and it began to affect their family life. Cooper's emotional distance from Veronica became noticeable, and their once solid bond began to weaken. His mother, who had always been a strong influence in his life, disapproved of his unfaithfulness. She openly criticized his actions, making things even more difficult for him. Friends and family also expressed concern, but Cooper continued his affairs, seemingly unable to stop. It became clear that his relationships with other women were taking over his life, and his marriage was suffering because of it. Eventually, the constant tension and betrayal led to their separation in 1951. Veronica could no longer live with the emotional pain caused by Cooper's affairs. Their relationship had broken down beyond repair, and they decided to part ways. Despite their efforts to save the marriage, it became impossible to continue. The affair with Neal, along with the earlier betrayals, had created too much damage. The separation marked the end of their marriage, leaving behind a reminder of how affairs can destroy even the strongest relationships. Gary Cooper's life just got more interesting. Patricia Neal's regret over an abortion. Gary Cooper and Patricia Neal had a passionate and intense affair that was filled with both love and turmoil. Their relationship began in the early 1940s, and from the start, they were drawn to each other. However, their connection was far from smooth. While they had strong chemistry, there were many issues beneath the surface. Cooper was often distant and quiet, while Neal was more open and expressive. This created moments of conflict, yet they stayed together, unable to fully let go. Their affair was full of ups and downs, fueled by their emotional attachment to one another. Cooper's jealousy was a constant strain on their relationship. He was very possessive, especially when it came to other men being around Neal. His insecurities often caused problems, and his jealousy led to moments of anger. One of the most troubling incidents was when Cooper slapped Neal in a fit of rage. His jealousy had gotten the best of him, and he lashed out, hurting Neal deeply. This violent moment made her question their relationship, yet they still stayed together, despite the emotional scars it left. This behavior highlighted the complicated and sometimes destructive nature of their affair. The situation grew even more complicated when Neal discovered she was pregnant. The news was both a surprise and a heavy burden as they faced a tough decision. For a short time, they thought about keeping the child, but the pressure of society's expectations made that decision difficult. In the 1940s, having a child out of wedlock was seen as scandalous, especially for public figures like Cooper and Neal. They knew that having a baby would bring unwanted attention and damage their careers. As a result, they decided to go through with an abortion, feeling that it was the only choice in their difficult situation. Cooper, who was always private, arranged the abortion in secret. He gave Neal money for the procedure, ensuring that their decision stayed hidden from the public eye. It was a decision made quietly and without anyone knowing, except for those directly involved. Neal, though conflicted and uncertain, trusts Cooper and follows his lead. The abortion was a painful choice, one that they both hoped would be forgotten. But the emotional effects of the decision would stay with Neal for the rest of her life. As time went on, Neal began to deeply regret the abortion. She found herself mourning the lost child for many years. The decision weighed heavily on her, and she couldn't shake the feeling of guilt that followed. She would often wonder what her child would have been like and whether things would have turned out differently if they had made another choice. The regret was something she could never escape, and it became a constant presence in her life. No matter how much time passed, the loss of the child stayed with her. Neal's regret was further complicated by her admiration for Ingrid Bergman, who had kept her child despite the controversy it caused. Bergman's decision was seen as scandalous at the time, but Neal respected her for choosing to keep the baby. Neal saw Bergman's courage in the face of public judgment and wished she had made the same choice. Bergman's strength gave Neal a sense of what could have been, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of envy for her bravery. This admiration only deepened Neal's regret, as she wished she could have been as strong as Bergman in her own decision. To cope with the overwhelming feelings of guilt and pain, Neal turned to alcohol. The emotional toll of the abortion was too much for her to bear, and alcohol became a way to numb the feelings of sorrow. She used drinking as a way to escape the guilt, though it only made things worse. As time went on, Neal's relationship with alcohol became more complicated. The pain from the abortion never fully went away, and she continued to struggle with the emotional consequences. Alcohol provided temporary relief, but it couldn't erase the deep sorrow that Neal felt. The abortion ultimately changed the course of Neal and Cooper's relationship. Although they stayed together for some time after the procedure, their connection was never the same. The shared secret of the abortion created a distance between them that neither could overcome. The emotional toll was too great, and the bond that once held them together began to unravel. Neal, who had once been so deeply in love with Cooper, found herself questioning the future of their relationship. The weight of the decision they had made together was too much to carry, and it eventually led to the end of their affair. Years later, Neal openly admitted that the abortion was the biggest regret of her life.
No pride left to stop me. I love you without dignity, without regret.
She reflected on the decision with great sorrow, acknowledging that it was a choice she could never undo. The loss of the child was something that haunted her, and it became one of the most painful parts of her past. Neal admitted that no matter how much time passed, the guilt and the mourning would always be there. The decision had shaped her life in ways she could never have predicted, and the emotional scars left by the abortion stayed with her for the rest of her years. But there's more to the story. Stay tuned to find out. The Hidden Battle. Gary Cooper's declining health. By the early 1950s, Gary Cooper's health was getting worse, but he refused to slow down. His stomach problems, which had started in the 1940s, became more painful. He had ulcers and hernias that made it hard for him to eat, but he kept working. He wanted to keep his strong, heroic image, even though his body was suffering. Cooper's movie roles made things even harder. He was famous for playing cowboys and action heroes, and he did many of his stunts. He was now in his 50s, but he still insisted on riding horses, fighting, and taking falls for the camera. Years of doing these stunts had left his body tired and injured. Old wounds never fully healed, and simple movements became painful. Yet, he ignored the warnings from doctors and continued to push himself. At the same time, his personal life was full of stress. His secret love affair with actress Patricia Neal was causing him great emotional pain. He cared deeply for her, but he was married to his wife, Veronica, and had a daughter, Maria. His family knew about the rumors, and the tension at home was growing. Even though he didn't leave his wife, the emotional distance between them became bigger. He was caught between guilt and love, and it affected his health even more. Despite everything, Cooper refused to see himself as weak. He avoided doctors as much as he could, but as the pain became unbearable, he had to undergo surgeries for his ulcers and hernias. Unfortunately, these treatments only gave him short-term relief. His body continued to break down. He grew tired more easily, and simple tasks became harder. His mother, Alice, was deeply worried about him, but instead of blaming his lifestyle, she blamed Patricia Neal. She believed the stress of the affair had made him sick. Her words only made Cooper feel worse. He was already struggling with guilt, and now his mother's disappointment added to his suffering. By the late 1950s, Cooper's failing health became harder to hide. He lost weight, his face looked tired, and the bright spark in his blue eyes started to fade. His friends and family noticed, but he stayed silent about his struggles. He had always been a private man, and in Hollywood, actors were expected to appear strong no matter what. Even as he grew weaker, Cooper continued acting. He still took on difficult roles and refused to show his pain. But by the end of the decade, it was clear. His body was failing him. The people who loved him saw the truth, even if he didn't want to admit it. Yet he kept going, driven by a deep need to keep working. He didn't want to stop, even as his body begged for rest. But time was catching up with him, and soon he would have no choice but to face the truth. Gary Cooper's life was full of both success and struggle. While he became a famous star, his health and personal problems made life difficult. He was a strong and determined man, but the stress and physical pain took a big toll on him. Even with everything going on, he kept working hard and tried to be there for his family. His legacy remains, not just in his movies, but in the way he faced challenges throughout his life. What do you think about Gary Cooper's struggles? Did anything surprise you about his life and career? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Click on the next video showing on your screen. You'll enjoy it.